Has someone said this to you yet? Our family doesn't have kid-free weddings, or you have to invite all of your aunties and uncles, or it's not a real wedding without a sit-down dinner, open bar, DJ, etc., etc. The list is endless. It's highly probable that there will never be a time in your life where more people are more judgmental of your decisions than when you're wedding planning. I reckon it's second only to choosing to have kids or not choosing to have kids. And at the end of the day, as long as you and your fiancé are happy, what do the opinions of others matter anyway? Well, I, for one, think it matters a lot. And definitely a lot more than what most viral clickbait social media posts will have you believe. I think that the feeling like you're being pulled in 3 different directions at once by everyone's expectations and opinions is not great, and that sleeping at night and not having your thoughts and decisions and what people have said going round and round in your head is a basic human right. Believe it or not, I am not one for being difficult for the sake of it, and personally, I avoid confrontation. But I also hate to be walked over, especially time and time again by the same people. I'm a big believer in only making the same mistake once, if I can help it. So today, inspired by a couple of social convos that I've seen and been a part of recently, I'd like to share with you how I try, and I know I'm not perfect either. Goodness knows that my family has some pretty interesting dynamics, but I try to deal with conflict and difficult conversations without completely severing ties with people. I'm hoping that this approach might help you with some of the dynamics of your family or friend groups and make your wedding planning experience just a little bit more smooth and a lot less anxiety stricken. Worried to the pit of your stomach that you've taken things a step too far and maybe permanently damaged some of your most important relationships. Let's get stuck into it. Unbridely is a community of pro-wedding vendors who believe in freedom and integrity in weddings, giving you options, solutions, tips and tricks to create the experience and memories that you and your fiancé really want and deserve. Because we believe that weddings are a team sport. With how-tos, stories and interviews with recently married couples, we find out what went right and what they'd change if they could go back and do it all over again. I'm Camille and welcome to the Unbridely podcast. Have you ever heard the saying, praise in public, criticise in private? This adage can be super helpful and applicable to nurture healthy relationships in everyday life. Like when a workmate completes a project successfully. Praising their efforts in front of the team, it can really boost morale, it can encourage others. And equally, if there's a need to provide, let's say, constructive feedback, doing it privately behind closed doors makes sure that the person doesn't feel embarrassed or singled out, which is sensitive, and it protects their dignity and confidence. But in weddings, if you're one who chooses to keep the peace rather than confronting issues head on, because remember that problems between family members can be very deep-seated and inherent in your family dynamics for a very long time. So in my personal and not qualified opinion, I believe you might be better served by sticking with the adage or the saying, praise in private, criticise in private. Or perhaps it's easier to explain to you as honouring people in private and confronting people in private. I've got a couple of stories which might help you to understand this concept and how it can help you. The first one is from a wedding Facebook forum group, and there was a bride who posted a classic AITA post. Do you know those? Am I the arsehole? Because in weddings, engaged couples often find out, and sometimes way too late, that a lot of their ideas and dreams and concepts that they put forward, and even the people that they've got on their guest list, are not what is traditional, unexpected, not customary, impolite, or it's just not how it's done. And if they reveal these ideas to their friends or family before the wedding, this is the feedback that they get, which is just another reason why I highly advise that you don't. Please don't tell people what you're doing. Don't tell people your plans. There's just no need. It's seriously the best way if you don't want to be told all of those things like it's not what's expected, it's not customary, traditional, it's impolite, then just don't tell people what you're doing. Anyway, I digress. So this particular bride, this one that made the Facebook post, she has 3 cousins. And 2 of the cousins, from what I could understand, live in the state that she's getting married in. And the third one lives out of state. And it seemed like the bride was closer, which makes sense with the 2 cousins and their children that live closer to her than the one that lives interstate. And so for whatever reason, she had made the decision, number 1, to have no children at her wedding except for the children that are in her wedding party. And number 2, she chose the children of the 2 cousins who live in the same state as her to be in her wedding party, which means she excluded the children of the cousin who lives out of state. So even though her cousin from interstate is invited, their children are not, which is usually a pretty big deal for someone who's traveling. So they have a few interesting things going on there. Let me break this down. For starters, way back in episode 4 of the Unbridely podcast, which is entitled Why Plus Ones Are Not a Thing Anymore and What to Do Instead, I talked about the community onion. Yes, onion, like the vegetable. It's a bit of a weird term, but if you imagine that you are at the center of the onion, and then you and your fiancé are the next most outer layer, and then your immediate families are the next most outer layer to that, and it builds and builds out. But when you get to aunties, uncles, cousins, and extended family, you're on those outside layers of the onion, right? And no matter your relationship with them, whether it's strong or whether it's, you see them frequently or infrequently, there's this feeling, and, I'm no sociologist, but I believe that there's an inbuilt understanding that one cousin equals another cousin because they're the same rank, right? They're on the same peel of your community onion. So it makes it really difficult, for example, when your friends are closer to you than a brother or sister, or when one cousin is closer to you and you have more love for them and you spend more time with them and you have a better connection with them to another cousin. So yes, this cousin who was interstate from the bride found out when they RSVP'd that it wasn't in fact a child-free wedding across the board, but it was just that their children weren't invited and the other cousin's kids would be there. It led to a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of questions from the out-of-state cousin, saying things like, well, my kids won't eat much. Well, it's really hard for me to get someone to look after them. And then, the soul searching, why have you excluded us? I feel like we're not important to you. It got really personal. Now, there are a couple of spots where I think the bride might have missed an opportunity to keep the peace here. And I also understand that not everyone wants to keep the peace, and sometimes a wedding is an excuse, isn't it? It's the perfect opportunity to air dirty laundry, to get things out. I think I've talked about this metaphor before about having, like a facial at the salon where you might have clogged pores and things like that, just cleanse it all away. I want beautiful, clear skin. I want smooth and radiant, plump skin. Get rid of the oil, the blackheads, blah, blah, blah. And then within a few days after this amazing cleansing beauty treatment, all these little pimples come to the surface. All this roughness starts showing up on your skin. And it wasn't the facial that did it or the beauty treatment that did it, unless it's a reaction, of course, but it was already in there. And your beautician has just drawn it out. And this is exactly what I think of when I think of weddings and what it draws out. The saying, weddings show people's true colours. Like those little paper strips that you put on your nose and it rips the blackheads out. Weddings draw out the impurities. They were always there. They might have been hard to see. They might have been really deep down. But this is when things come out. Weddings are like a truth serum. So the bride did what she wanted to do, and then she was questioned by her cousin, and she didn't know how to reply. So I guess the first thing I think of here is to have a reason. Have a really good reason for why you choose what you choose. A lot of the respondents on the forum jump straight into the "it's your wedding" rhetoric. And I get what they're saying. It's your wedding, do it your way. Invite who you want, make no apologies, right? And that's great if we never have to come into contact with that cousin or other members of the family or anyone else who knows about it ever again. Or if you simply don't want a relationship with them in the future. If you are looking to hurt people's feelings or have an excuse to cool off your relationship with people, go for it, because it will hurt people. For sure, you could do it that way. You could say, look, it's our wedding and this is the choice we made. However, for those of us who want to continue living in a society with other people and we'd still like to have a relationship with our family and friends, but the way that weddings are structured and the cost of weddings means that there are some tough decisions that have to be made. Like literally, there has to be a line in the sand somewhere. And you'll never make everyone happy. You know that, right? In this case, the bride took care of one part of her community onion and not the other, which would hurt. It would hurt that interstate cousin, and they will never forget it for the rest of their lives. If you had a sweary, chocolate-addicted, wine-sipping fairy godmother who could help you with your wedding planning, what would you wish for? Perhaps no more waking up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, wondering what you've forgotten, or fretting about your RSVPs. Maybe no more spreadsheets or post-it notes or endless to-do lists. Well, I can help you with all of that. Wedsites is an Australian wedding website builder, guest management software, and wedding project planner all in one. Why is this such a game changer for you? Well, imagine everything to do with your wedding being in one place, updated in real time in the cloud, shareable to anyone else that's helping you, password protected for your guests, with notifications to tell you what needs to be done next and by when. It's amazing, right? I love how easy Wedsites is to set up and use, and how there are no ads on the platform yelling at you to spend more money on your wedding. To get started on your very own free wedding website, just head to wedsites.com. That's WEDSITES.com, and enter the code UNBRIDELYPOD, that's Unbridely POD, to get 10% off their paid planning tools. The link is in the show notes. So getting back to the adage, confronting people in private and recognising or honouring people in private. The cousin that lives out of state has messaged the bride in private and said, why? Which makes it even more difficult, I think, because they're not being unreasonable there. They're actually going, look, I can't shake this feeling that we're not equal and that you don't love us. And one part of our family has been selected over and above another, and I don't understand why. I thought we were close. So at least the cousin has tried to discuss this in private, but I think one of the problems here is that the bride has chosen her other two cousins' children to be in the wedding party and not the third cousin, and there's not a clean line there. She's breaking that layer of the community onion. And it feels like something that she might have been able to avoid, because you could anticipate this and understand where this third cousin is coming from. Without having a really good reason why she's done that, and being able to say that reason and have her out-of-state cousin accept that, she's got a tough decision to make about whether or not she wants to hold on to her good relationship with her family member. And there are other ways she could have made her cousin's children feel special, if she's more close to them than the one who's out of state. But you can do it without letting the third cousin know, the person who might get hurt. And this is what I'm trying to get to by talking about questioning in private and honouring in private. So another example is one of my listeners. Actually, hey, Becca, I've forgotten where you're from. Let's have a quick look, because it was just this morning we were messaging in the Unbridled Couples Facebook group. Arizona. Becca from Arizona, hey, Becca, was asking a question about her two mums. So there is her birth mum, if you like, her biological mum, basically raised her since then. She has a good relationship with the stepmum and she has a good relationship with her mum. She wants to honour both of them in their own way and she doesn't want anyone to be hurt. But the real issue comes when her biological mum and stepmum don't like each other and they don't get along. So there's no need for anyone to question anyone in this situation. It's not about the questioning in private part of my little saying, but this is a great example of honouring or recognising people in private, because if there's a potential for someone's feelings to get hurt, it's respectful to not have that conversation or situation in front of others, to not show it in public, or in a wedding situation. So if Becca were to do something special with her mum on the wedding day, maybe during the ceremony or something like that, stepmum would be sitting there going, well, I raised her since she was 9, because the relationship is so bad between mum and stepmum, and vice versa. If she chose to do something with stepmum, stepmum came up and did a reading during the ceremony, or if stepmum and dad walked Becca down the aisle, if her stepmum was one of the witnesses on her marriage certificate, there's the potential that mum wouldn't know what's coming and how she is about to be recognised, and that could hurt mum as well. It would be an uncomfortable situation for both of them, no matter what Becca chooses to do if it's in public. So when there is conflict between, especially people who don't like each other, it's not the smartest thing to single people out in public in such an emotional situation as well. One of the members of Unbridled Couples answered Becca's call out, and she very smartly, and I applaud you, Renee, for answering Becca and for having her think about how she can recognise both of them, mum and stepmum, but in private, like on the morning of, or during the bridal shower, or, at any other fucking time that isn't seen and heard by everyone. Becca's mum will never know when her stepmum is honoured and made to feel special, and stepmum will never know when Becca's mum is made to feel special, honoured, and her relationship is recognised. Doing whatever you want, really, showing them both that they're very special in their own right also takes away any potential misgivings on the actual wedding day itself. You don't need that, because that can also dredge up anxiety. And so in a way, I guess this is just a little public service announcement for you to have a think about the dynamics between your family members and, maybe it's certain friends or friendship groups. There can be friends who just don't gel with each other, but you love them both dearly. So please have a think about keeping them the same rank in your wedding, the same layer of your community onion, and how about recognizing the contribution they've made to making your life better, happier, funnier, more joyful, all the things that they've given you and done for you, and let them know in a letter the day before, or by gifting them with a beautiful personalized piece of jewelry on the morning of, or let them know it with special photos that you have with them. If keeping the peace is important to you, do it in private. Do it when the other one doesn't know, doesn't see, doesn't hear, and will be none the wiser. I think it will definitely help your stress levels to manage these kind of uncomfortable situations ahead of the wedding day itself. And it will definitely help you to relax knowing that you've done your very best to nourish your relationships. And perhaps most importantly, that your relationship with your future husband, spouse, or wife is going to be the focus the most important thing on your wedding day because you've taken care of everyone else ahead of time. I'd love to know what you think about this bit of advice about questioning in private and recognizing in private. And I'd love to hear your experiences and your stories too. You can email me hello@unbridely.com, or you can DM me @unbridely on Instagram, and that's where I spend most of my time. And I can't wait to chat with you again next week. See ya. That about wraps it up for this episode of the Unbridely podcast. For the links and resources we mentioned, please head to the show notes. And if you love the show, please review and subscribe on the podcast platform you're on now so you don't miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much for listening. And remember, weddings are a team sport. Catch you soon.